All right, let's do it.
Three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show. I'm your host Ben, and the EPL is back. And after watching my team play for the first time in like 29 days, I kind of wish it went on another break. To be honest, but it is an EPL focused show, so no more Champions League, and no more talking about Villarreal Rex, and that's maybe not the best example. And no more international football for a bit. So, anyways, I'm
Mhm.
kind of in a dour mood, but I think my co-host Rex is a little bit better, as you can see with a smile. So I'm hoping maybe some of that rubs off on me. So good to see you, Rex.
Good to be back. Yeah, and you can see I'm wearing my Arsenal hat proudly, thankfully. Honestly, I was worried about the game. I really was. Did not expect that, at least that scoreline, that margin. But yeah, man, I'm happy. Um, it gets harder though. I think we'll talk about like Liverpool on the weekend, so we'll see. It's so early. I'm still just managing my expectations.
Yeah, I think it was Andrew that once said it was like good things come to those. Maybe it was my mom. Good things come to those who wake up. And Arsenal played
I like
early, and
that.
that was a good thing to wake up to, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, and so we'll kind of just do what we've done in the past. We'll kind of get started with the story of the weekend. I'm gonna go with a little cheeky one because I definitely don't want to talk about Liverpool. What do you got so far?
Well, I got in honor of Holland's third hat trick already. I got a treble of Holland stats. The first one is the fastest to three Premier League hat tricks, and this is in appearances. Holland has done it in 8 games. The
Oh my god!
next, the next quickest is Michael Owen, 48 games. I mean, you got guys like Ruud van Nistelrooy, Luis Suarez, Fernando Torres. They're all in the 60s or 70s in appearances before they're getting their third hat trick, and Holland's already done it in 8 games. And then also, Holland is only 9 goals away from equaling the Premier League Golden Boot tally the last 3 seasons, and that's 23. So he's only 9 goals away from that. And then the last one, Haaland, if he was just a team, he would be let's see, the seventh highest Premier League scoring team, with 14 goals if he was just a team himself. Brentford have 15 as a team, and Holland has 14. So, man, it's crazy. And by the way, he's going to be resting during the World Cup, and then coming back, with passion, desire, and restful legs. So we got that to worry about too.
I mean, you mentioned it. I guess maybe last week's show, or maybe the one before. But it's his first season, so I mean, in some ways, this is like absolutely absurd. But I think if you before the Community Shield game, I think some people were expecting this, to be honest. And that sounds
Yeah,
absolutely crazy to say, but he scored a goal a game pretty much his entire career, and that's with Norway as well, not just with Dortmund. And the
yeah,
injury, people had concerns about the injury issues, and I think you brought that up as
hmm
well.
I
Um,
did. Yeah.
I was maybe concerned. Maybe he doesn't necessarily, have the best first touch. Maybe because he doesn't like to head the ball, that would be an issue. That hasn't necessarily showed up either yet. And I think after that Community Shield game, people were like, "Oh, it's going to take some time, England." And man, have those takes not aged well at all.
Yeah, I
Um,
think he scored in every goal, and he scored in every game for City except one. I think it was like the second game of the season, and he had an assist in that game too. I think it was one of the ones where he had like 10 touches, but one was an assist. So he's scoring every game almost for City. It's crazy. The only thing that can stop him is injury, I would think.
I mean, you're pairing the guy that probably makes the best runs in the box in all of world football, and I think he's maybe 21 now, or maybe he's even 22. With literally the best crosser in the game, or the best guy that can pick up passes in De Bruyne. It
Mhm.
it makes sense that this works, unfortunately. Um, and I mean that was we'll talk about Holland later on. I kind of did go with a similar city theme, but it is a little different. I saw a video clip, I think on Sunday, and it was titled "Just the Two of Us," and it actually had like that song in the background, and it was basically, well, I think the caption said "Football One," and it was a Man City fan, so you kind of expect that. But it was basically a montage between Pep Guardiola and Miguel Arteta, and
Mm.
basically how those two are now, or the two league leaders, and the way things are going, it looks like it might be maybe a two-team horse race between those two. And everyone knows about Arteta's time at City and being kind of Pep's understudy. So I don't know. I thought that was kind of a chic video, and I think it's a pretty good theme right now.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll see. I still don't think Arsenal are even. I mean, they're close, I guess, but they're still not really that close to City, especially
Mhm.
after the Man United game. It was like, wow, we're still not on the same level. I don't think anyone is in the Premier League is
Yeah.
on the same level as City right now.
I mean, the only thing I can think of is, and again, this is you have to go out there because they were City is already dealing with some injury crises at the back at least. If
Hmm.
something happens to De Bruyne, maybe at the World Cup, maybe he gets tired legs by Belgium going on a run. When he comes, that team would be different without Kevin De Bruyne. I think, or at
Hmm.
least they wouldn't be. I mean, they would still dominate the ball. They would still find Holland chances, but I don't think you would get those similar kinds of looks. But that's
Yeah,
really the only thing I can think of, to be honest. Um,
yeah, and they could still do a couple games without him and be fine with like Bernardo Silva or Gundogan in there.
mhm,
So
yeah,
just more depth too.
but I mean, we're kind of beating around the bush. But I guess we'll basically get started with that game. But we will start with Man City, Man United. This does end 6-3 in an absolute bonkers game. This was another thing to wake up to and just be like, what the hell? And I kind of categorized it as the former Bayern coaches derby because before Pep had Arteta, he and Ten Hag were together at Bayern. But I also kind of phrased it as it was a humbling for the red team because Man United were coming into some good form, and some fans, at least online, did have some optimism that this could maybe be a thing. And when you saw the starting lineup, I kind of did as well. And I look really foolish on this because I think I tweeted something about this, and this did not age well. Um, but they started without Rodri or Calvin Phillips. It was Gundogan in middle, and it was basically Kevin De Bruyne, Gundogan, and Bernardo Silva in midfield. And that is what Pep played in the Champions League final. And we know how that didn't work out. And they also didn't have Ruben Diaz or John Stones. There was a Kanji and Ake at the back. Like as crazy as this wasn't a fully fit City team. Kyle Walker played, and he was apparently hurt. He was only able to go a little bit, and so
Mhm.
that just kind of sets it up where it's like this is just what happened afterwards was just not really what I was expecting. I'll just kind of do a quick rundown and then kind of get your first thoughts, and then just kind of do a discussion and go from there. I mean, there's a lot to talk really for both teams, so we can probably just kind of pick one, pick one for each.
Mhm.
But goals from starts off with Foden, and it's a nice assist from Bernardo Silva. It's basically a cutback across goal. Foden does well to basically make a run unmarked in the box. Foden's actually playing on the right wing. He's not left wing this time, and he makes a run from the right to kind of the center that no one really follows him. I think fan the commentators tried to go at Ericsson for this, and you can maybe see why. But when Foden makes this run, there's something like six Man United players around, and they just don't see it. So that's just what it is. And then Holland gets his first goal after really a header from a corner kick. And I mentioned how I thought maybe his aerial ability would kind of show up, and it was a great header here. Just completely jumped
Yeah.
over. I think it was McTominay, and then really all of the insane stuff happened almost in quick succession. Holland gets the second goal, and this is just a FIFA-like ball from Kevin De Bruyne. Um, you know, there's a lot Man United can do better to maybe close this down. Maybe you can stop Kevin De Bruyne getting the ball in all that space. Maybe you stop Grealish from getting the ball in all that space because that Grealish first had the ball, and that's how this first happened. But the ball that De Bruyne picks out, just you don't see other people even trying that. And then at
Mhm.
the same time, Holland dives to get to it. Like Holland knows how to get to that ball, and we've talked about his control with his body. Someone that size should not be able to get to that ball, to be honest. And it's a great finish. Um, and then Foden gets the fourth. It's Holland squares the ball. Anthony kind of gets one back, and then basically Man United kind of put some dressing a little bit towards the end. But I
Mhm.
think really the headline is Foden and Holland start off with getting a hat trick, and we'll kind of each. And I guess the first derby. I don't know if it was Foden's first derby. Yeah, it wasn't Foden's. Holland's first derby game. So,
Yeah.
we'll kind of get started with you, Rex. What were you first thinking watching all of this?
Well, yeah, it was crazy. Well, to touch on Man U real quick, and then I'll go to my thought on City. But
Yeah.
I was just surprised that McTominay was in and not Casemiro.
Yes.
Casemiro, you texted us about this, and it just makes sense. I know McTominay has been playing well, but Casemiro would have been a better option in this game and try to stem some of that midfield flow and maybe put some pressure on De Bruyne. He had 2 assists in this game, so maybe Casemiro in there doesn't give him enough time to pick out some of those balls. But to touch on City, I know we talked up Holland in the beginning, and Holland gets a lot of the plaudits. But I was really also just really blown away by Foden. He already has 8 goals and 3 assists or 2 assists in the Premier League already. I mean, you know, we talk about how we don't know what City is going to really do out wide, especially because Grealish is in there now too. But it looks like they've kind of figured things out. Pep's figured things out, and
That's a good
Foden,
shout.
Foden, Foden's benefiting too. And I think Grealish is getting better, slowly, and I think he's doing all right. I think he needed a run of games, and I think he'll continue to get better. Honestly, I don't think he'll put up like Foden-esque numbers at this point, but that front three is pretty good. And then you throw in De Bruyne and Silva had an assist in this one. De Bruyne had two, so that's 3 assists coming from the midfield. I mean, you just can't shut him down. If you shut down Holland and Foden, then you're gonna have De Bruyne and Silva. Or if you shut down Grealish and Holland, you're gonna have Foden and Silva pop up and De Bruyne pop up. So they're just hard. They're hard to shut down. I mean, I guess you would just take some notes from some of the teams that did manage to kind of slow them down, not stop them because you can't. Just slow them down, and I don't think Ten Hag really did that because he kind of went in this attacking lineup to try to go toe to toe with them. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess like it's fun to see, and we want that. But I mean, if you're not pragmatic sometimes, then this is the result, and it could have been worse than 6-3. I mean, it could have been 6-1.
I mean, and that's what a lot of people, I think, the guys on NBC kind of read after. Definitely, I'm with you with the Casemiro, but it's not just playing an attacking lineup. You can sometimes play basically guys that are good with the ball. They're supposed to be good with the ball at their feet, as opposed to someone that's just going to hoof it away. That can be an
Yeah,
attacking lineup, and just Man United were not good passing the ball. They're giving the ball away. So it's one thing that you're not. Another thing too is just literally no one was putting pressure on any of these City. Like if you watch the highlights, the way before City gets the ball into the final third, once they get the ball in the final third, you're dead. But before they do that, they have all this. Whether it's Gundogan, whether it's Grealish that was dropping deep, sometimes it was Kevin De Bruyne that was getting the ball, and just all this space, and that just should not happen. You don't understand why that happened, and frankly, it's because Man United did not play with a defensive minded midfielder other than I guess McTominay. So that's where
McTominay was it. Yeah.
Casemiro closes those gaps. Um, but another thing too is just Anthony and Sancho. I do not know what either their role was supposed to be, or if Ten Hag told them what to do and they just didn't do it. But they were just kind of standing around when they didn't have the ball, and that really hurt as well. Like when you play City, you have to play. An entire team has to understand what their role is without the ball. And that's what we
Yeah.
saw with Villa, and that's what we saw with Dortmund. And like you mentioned, it's not necessarily like the way to solve the puzzle, but you can slow them down. And that just the way United went about it. Also, we're kind of focusing on United. We'll touch on City, obviously. I In a game like this, I do not understand the role that Bruno Fernandes offers. Other than you expect, maybe you can win the ball back and do a counter, and then get Bruno the ball somewhere in the final third, and maybe he can pick out a pass to Rashford. But you didn't see nearly enough of that. They weren't able to really get Bruno the ball at all. And again, he was just playing so high upfield, he wasn't offering himself back. Another thing too is you only had Rashford up top, and literally he was the only one offering a run ahead. And I think I mean, it was a little bit better in the second half. I mean, we can maybe kind of touch on that. Martial came back, and Casemiro did come in, but and Anthony did have a really nice goal that I think that's two
Yeah.
two for him. So it's not. I mean, Man United is not going to be judged on how they perform for City, even though I think their fans would argue otherwise. Uh, so there is some of that as well. I mean, you kind of touched on Grealish and Foden. I'm gonna do something different. I'm gonna maybe get you to touch on Ikanji and the guy that came in for Kyle Walker and Sergio Gomez. What did you think of their performance?
I mean, Sergio Gomez, I think, is going to be, if he can get enough time at City, he's going to be a star. I think he's played really
He
well.
looked good.
He was a good Anderlecht player too. And then we know a little bit about Akanji from Dortmund, and he's been good too. But the crazy thing with Akanji is, he was bought late in the window and literally like immediately thrust into the starting lineup, and he's performed pretty well. Him and Ake started this game, and
Yeah,
I mean it's shaky because it's like a very new partnership, and they did end up like conceding 3 goals. But I think it's okay. And these guys might not necessarily be starting when you have like Diaz was on the bench. Laporte actually came in and played a little bit. So at worst, if these guys don't become starters, you're getting them playing time, and we know how important depth is. Maybe the only weakness right now is with City is the back line, and it looks like they're just going to be getting you know people back. Diaz will be back. Laporte is getting healthy, so these backup players that are playing pretty well are getting good game time. So if Laporte does miss more time or Diaz does, no problem putting Akanji in for a run of games or Ake in for a couple games. It's just more depth. It's almost like a new transfer window when they're getting like Laporte back, a really good defender back. It's a shot in the arm, and they don't need another shot in the arm if you're rooting against them or if you like Arsenal. It's not. It's going to be tough to catch them.
I
I
mean,
mean,
I thought
uh,
this was the opportunity to maybe for them to slip up in the beginning. You're just getting Holland, and you like Laporte was their best passer. You actually saw basically Kyle Walker and Cancelo playing almost inverted in midfield to just kind of help Ake kind of build possession from the back essentially because they were struggling with that with Ake.
mm,
Akanji has come in and been amazing on the ball. I was truly not expecting that, to be honest. They got him relatively cheap. I think it was maybe 20 million. Now, other clubs that's a lot, but for City nothing. So very good business by them. And
yeah,
just by that one thing because Stones looks like he's picked up another injury. Uh, Diaz, you might not even have to rely on Stones and Diaz anymore, and just that kind of thought as well is insane. So it's there used to be a part of me that could look at that and be like, you know what, there's still a chance for them to slip up. I don't see that
yeah.
anymore. And the
Mm.
only way they're going to lose is if they have 20 shots, 10 on target, and just either keeper has an amazing day, or just they just miss up on their finishing. Um, and maybe they'll come up against better teams in the Champions League that at least do have a better way to maybe counter on them a little bit more. And maybe finish some of those chances, but again, this is without Rodri. Rodri in the squad makes them better too.
Oh yeah.
So
And
yeah,
Calvin Phillips was out too. So yeah, they they did it. They did it really with only Gundogan as their like holding mid, basically.
I mean, this is going to be probably a historic season. Not just for the actual team. You mentioned it's going to be, I guess, a lottery on when does Holland break Salah's season record? Does he do it before February? As opposed to like not just him winning the Golden Boot. No, unless he gets an injury.
Yeah,
So the Salah has 32. He could easily get that before February. The way he's on form.
crazy.
And frankly, Kevin De Bruyne might be on assist record watch as well.
Yeah,
He's
he's
on
got
like
eight
he's at 8 now.
eight assists, and
Yeah.
he already holds the record at 20, I believe, in one season. So that's and then Foden. I mean, right now, I think Foden's second in Golden Boot. Right, I think he's overtaken Mitrovic
If
at
he has
8.
8, I didn't realize he
Yeah,
was that high.
yeah. So that's crazy. They're gonna have the Golden Boot winner, maybe the second place in the Golden Boot, and the leading assister. They might even have like the leading top two assisters. We'll see what like Silva does, and I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, one I guess final thought to kind of focus on United. So we mentioned we kind of went a little bit on their approach. We went a little bit after the midfielders. I think you have to look at their back line as well. They were not good, and a lot of these like you can think of Malacia. I guess it was Martinez. It was their first derby, the first run at City. But oh man, just I don't. And none of them were good passing the ball. Varane got hurt,
Mm.
and that forced Lindelof to come on. It was interesting he didn't bring Maguire on. I don't know if Maguire. I didn't actually look if Maguire was fit on the bench or not. But that was an interesting call by Ten Hag. So he kind of tipped his hand there, where he thinks of Maguire if Maguire was fit.
He was not fit.
Oh well, so much for that. We'll
So
edit that.
literally, like Lindelof was the only option.
We'll edit that. But frankly, I kind of talked up Dallo at least because he looked good for Portugal. He was awful in this game, both defending and just. I mean, some of these times he was defending 2v1s with overlap
Mhm.
runs, and Grealish was
Yeah,
cutting inside. Bernardo Silva was kind of running on that side as well. So you can kind of maybe defend some of that, but he was giving the ball away way too easily, I thought, and that was
mm,
a problem too. Like it's one thing to try to play front foot attacking football, but you have to when you pass the ball, you have to pass the ball to your team, especially versus Man City.
yeah.
You have to keep the ball somewhat.
One quick thing about United, though, I guess, if Alex United fans listening, they did win the second half 3-2.
Mhm.
I know it was 4-0 or 3-0 at halftime or whatever, but they can take something from that, and maybe Martial scored a double, maybe they can get him hot, and Anthony scored again, so he's adjusting well. So there are some positives to take, not many, but I think you gotta look at that and just be like, hey, we'll take winning the second half against City. We know United's not close to them in terms of talent as a squad. We know that already. And they probably maybe shouldn't have, gone toe to toe with them. Maybe it would have been like a 2-0 or something. But, they won the second half.
Well,
Maybe some people will find some scoring for them.
to set up the way they did, I mean, they had to have they had to have, Ten Hag had to have thought, well, they're not going to have a ton of the ball, so it is going to be mostly counter stuff. And
Mm.
when you look at Sancho on that left side, I don't know if Martial was fit to fully go because we haven't seen him in a while. So maybe he was on a minutes restriction. I would have played
Yeah.
Rashford left wing. And I would have played Martial at striker. To be honest, I would have
Mm.
benched Sancho. Sancho did not
Mm.
offer any kind of running behind or anything. Sancho will work when United have a lot of the ball and they're able to get the ball in the final third and kind of do stuff around the
Mm.
box. But he's
Mm.
not going to be the one to make runs behind to kind of threaten, or to at least keep Kyle Walker or that fullback Cancelo honest. And you kind of saw
Mm.
if there was maybe a negative to City after Kyle Walker got the injury, Cancelo came on and played on that right side, and it is Cancelo that gave away the penalty. And
Mm.
Fred got past Cancelo to get that shot that led to the second goal. So maybe Cancelo can be got at least defensively. But again, I'm
Mm.
picking at straws.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what you have to do with City. It's crazy.
All right, and so well, that's enough of the Man City, and I guess it's fun to kind of look at United's misery. Brentford kind of had the same fun. So actually, maybe you can say that I wasn't really impressed because Brentford did the same thing in a shorter time. Uh, but anyways, we'll move on to maybe your most fun game of the weekend. Arsenal and Spurs. This one does end 3-1. Um, not Eddie Royal. Emil Royal with a red card at 2-1. I don't necessarily know if that really changed the game at all, but that's when they definitely lost it. Goals
Mm.
from Partey getting it going with a beautiful shot. That was a good
Oh
thing to
yeah.
wake up to. Um,
Hmm.
Kane with a PK. We'll get into why maybe, and then Jesus was able to kind of get the second one in a bit of a I want to say it's a scrappy goal, but I'll just kind of say this. It's really smart by him to recognize, hey, maybe Lloris spills this because when he shoots it, he actually is behind the two defenders and he's making the
Mm.
run immediately after Saka shoots it. So I think he's showing good poacher instincts. That's
Yeah.
been maybe one of the negatives. I want to say negative. I shouldn't say that. Concerns to Jesus kind of playing him as the main striker because he's not really playing with anyone else. That was a good chance of showing he can do this. He showed good hold up play, and he
Hmm.
showed a good poacher instincts as well. Maybe would have
Yeah.
scored another if not for because he missed a header, but he was
Yeah. The
he was
header
he was
early.
maybe hurt. After he got like some kind of
He
tackle
got
on him.
hacked on the ankle, or yeah.
Yeah, and then Shaka was able to get the third, and so we'll kind of just give the floor to you, Rex. Just
Ooh.
yeah, just have fun with it.
Well, like I said earlier, I was kind of worried about this game. I know Tottenham's really good. Man, I was worried honestly, but the way we started, the way Arsenal started, they just started super fast. They play a lot of quick like 1-2s in really tight spaces, and it must be something they work on a lot because I've seen it in every game this year. They'll play quick 2-3 touches out of trouble, just like give and goes, and then they break a press and they're on. And that's been really impressive this year. But I was also just worried because international break, of course, Arsenal fans are used to people coming back from international break hurt. We had maybe
Did
Zinchenko
didn't
was
know if
hurt,
Party was
Tierney
going to
was
play.
hurt, Party might have been hurt. And then all three played. Zinchenko and Thomas started, and they looked pretty good. They didn't look hurt to me, so that was good. I mean, you texted me about Shaka having a more offensive role, especially with Zinchenko like kind of pinching in with Thomas. It's kind of surprising that it's Shaka, because usually he's a defensive mid guy. We know he does have like a hammer of a left foot, but he
Yeah,
doesn't usually score and get assist. And now he's kind of being freed up for more of an attacking role. He can make deep runs from the center of the park deep, and Zinchenko's kind of there to help out. Sometimes it did kind of bite them at times if Zinchenko's up, kind of filling in for Shaka and Martinelli doesn't come back. There could be some trouble there, like Gabriel might be drawn out 1-on-1. But now we have the center backs to take on people 1-on-1 if we do get countered, which is nice. But yeah, man, it was good. I think now it kind of just proves that we can play with the big boys. We can hopefully beat a lot of these top four teams, and that sometimes has been, a little kryptonite for Arsenal at times. We've had seasons where they beat the teams they should beat, and then top four they have no chance. They get crushed by those teams. So it was nice finally. We lost to United, and that's kind of a traditional top four team. So it's nice to be able to come back and beat a top four team, and actually kind of you know dominate the match for the most part.
mhm.
And we know this time team's good too. So it is a little bit of a shot in the arm, but we got Liverpool, and it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be tough. I don't think we have the like squad depth yet. We're getting there, but I'm still just worried about squad depth, and we are playing like the same people, and it seems like Nketiah, Vieira, maybe like Sambi and Tomiyasu are always the guys off the bench, and Tierney. So we have like a good sense of who we want to play and what style we want to play, which is really nice to see. And now we have the players that we can, play multiple different ways.
I would
Like
I would
you
agree with
mentioned,
that.
Jesus, he can hold it up, he can poach, he can make runs. So it's fun, man. It's fun, but it's so early that I'm still just not. I'm tempering my expectations because
Mhm.
who knows what can happen. I'm worried about the World Cup too, which kind of sucks with it being in the middle of the year. It's just I'm just worried that all these players get beat up on international duty. They're going to get really beaten up and at the World Cup. I mean, it's a fact that teams are going to have players coming back hurt from the World Cup. So, Arsenal with injuries, it always worries me. And, I just don't know. The squad depth kind of caught us last year. So I don't know. I still have a lot of reservations about actually being able to, contend with City for the top spot just because I mean I think if City played Arsenal, I think City would win fairly easily. Maybe not easily, but I think it would be 3-1 probably City. We're still not that close yet, but we're getting there, and that's important. I think. I just hope people can stay healthy. As an Arsenal fan, there's always hurt people. I feel like I don't know why. It's gotten a little better since Wenger is gone. I don't know what happened there either.
Hmm?
But yeah, I'm happy, but managing my expectations.
Yeah, I gotcha. I mean, personally, I just from what I see is you do have a significant drop off when Party can't play. So one
Mm,
thing I guess I would say is if I guess you were the owner or you were the I guess football director. Well, I guess maybe not even that. Do you think if Arsenal is still neck and neck with City, or maybe I don't know, maybe they're like fifth or something like with 1 point to Chelsea, do you think they
mm.
do any kind of business in January to maybe address that? I know they were linked to a number of people at the end of deadline day, and they just didn't end up pulling the trigger. Or do you think maybe they just believe Sambi trains well? Maybe they just think eventually he'll come good.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, I agree. Um, I mean, Arteta kind of said before the season started in preseason training that Sambi was like amazing, and that kind of reaffirmed in Arteta's mind that we have a backup for Thomas, so we don't really need to go out and overspend. I think if they could have gotten someone for you know 20 million, maybe they would have done that. But I don't know. I think it is worrisome that Thomas gets hurt a bunch. I think I would maybe in January if this title race is close pull the trigger on maybe Luis from Villa. Yeah,
I
that's
was gonna
someone that
mention him because he's on a
yeah, they
contract.
were linked to him,
Yeah,
and he's on so maybe I think he was like he had a couple bids, like Aston Villa rejected a couple bids from Arsenal, so I think he'd be like 30 mil, which isn't terrible. Maybe even cheaper come January because, like you said, its contract's running up. Tillman's is also out there, but I think Luis would be a better fit
I
just
do too.
as a number six. But maybe they won't do it, and if they don't do it, I think it's because they do believe in Lakanga. And if you bring in someone else, then Lakanga's not going to play as much. Maybe he'll go on loan and then it's kind of a waste there potentially. But I am worried if someone gets hurt and then it's Sambi, we don't have any room for Sambi to get hurt or Shaka to get hurt then
Mhm.
because we already have El Neni out for a while. So I don't know. We'll see come January. It's nice having the January window as like an option because you can kind of see what happens. And if Thomas has a streak where he doesn't get hurt, maybe we don't dip in. But if he does kind of have a couple games where he gets hurt, then maybe we do kind of buy a security plan because we kind of went without one last year at fullback, and it ended up costing him top four at the end.
I think
So
so. Yeah.
I don't. I think this time maybe the club would buy and kind of learn from that. You know.
I mean, if there's also maybe a weakness other than maybe the depth we talked about, like if I'm Liverpool scouting, I think I'm maybe gonna try to isolate Gabriel in 1v1s. What do you think about that? Or is that just maybe a kind of an overreaction? He's only had a couple errors, and it's just maybe just being overshadowed.
Yeah, I mean he's really good. He played well last year too. But yeah, I mean if you're looking at the back line, it would either be Ben White for me. I target him, or yeah, Gabriel because Saliba's been so good. But I think Gabriel's really good. There's some big clubs that wanted him. I think Barca wanted him over the summer.
Mhm.
So I think I think Arteta and Arsenal will be fine with Liverpool's targeting Gabriel because he's also got size. But I think I would maybe go after Ben White. Maybe I mean Louis Diaz against him maybe just
Interesting.
because I mean it kind of he
We
Ben
did
White's a
say we did see
quick defender, but he's not as quick as Diaz,
we did
right?
see Zaha have a go at Ben White. I think that first game.
Hmm.
So I can maybe see that. I mean,
Ben White's quick, but he's not as quick as like
mhm.
yeah Saha or Luis Diaz.
That's a really good, interesting shout. I mean, I was actually going to talk up Ben Wright a little bit because I used to think he was a liability, at least going forward as well. And he actually
Mhm.
offered Saka a few overlap runs, which I think helped.
Yeah,
That that
he got
may,
assist too.
that
So
maybe helped with the second goal when Saka was able to,
mhm.
to cut inside. Um, I mean, the thing with Shaka is really really remarkable. To be honest, when you go back and remember the history of maybe it wasn't under Arteta, maybe it was under Emery. I don't know
Yeah, I think it was under Emery
when he was
first.
the captain and he like walked off the
Yeah.
field or whatever. People thought
Mhm.
immediately at that point he had to go.
Mhm.
And here a couple years later, he's turning around and after they score, he's literally getting the whole team to kind of to join up and to maybe settle nerves or that was
Mhm.
unique. A
Yeah, I
captain
love
like
that.
captain like moment. And it didn't really work out because they ended up conceding a little bit after that. Uh, but that was interesting to see. Like
Yeah,
there are a lot of
I
reasons
I
to
honestly,
to believe in this team right at the moment.
yeah, I honestly think too. I think Xhaka and Arteta are kind of the same kind of like soccer player. The same kind of mentality. They're really feisty and kind of will do anything to win. So I think that they're also on the same page, kind of. And I mean, Shaka still has gotten a couple red cards with Arteta in charge, and I still think he might. But if he has that more attacking role too, he doesn't have to be the defensive steal. He doesn't have to be like getting a lot of yellows and potentially reds. But
Well,
if
what do
he
you?
is up, in the counter, he is going to have to come back and he might, pick up some yellows, fouling people. But he's been playing well, and I think it's him and Arteta being kind of, on the same page, and Arteta motivating Shaka. It's nice.
I mean, I actually think this is almost genius by Arteta. And again, this requires a lot of people to understand their role. I don't think you could maybe do this with Tierney in the squad as opposed to Zinchenko. In other words, because when Shaka does go up, Zinchenko is basically kind of the pivot guy. And sometimes it was almost a midfield three. It was almost like when because Spurs were playing so deep, they allowed for this to happen too. But I saw it was basically almost the two center backs and then a three with Sinchenko, Party, and Ben White kind of push it up forward, and that was almost like your midfield, and then it was like a front five. Um, but I think what's interesting is when Arsenal attack, they have numbers in the box now, and I think if there was maybe a concern, another concern I had in some of the earlier games, I remember Fulham being a good example. Where it would sometimes just be Jesus in the box, and sometimes when
Yeah,
Jesus would kind of drop in, there was no one else to kind of to be a number to kind of mess with CBs. Now
yeah.
Shaka is there almost at all times. So I think it helps fix your numbers. Um,
It
and
does, and the deep run too, like a run from deep, it's always tough to pick up because like Hoiberg or Betancourt will have to pick him up, and then if they can't pick him up, then Dyer or one of the center backs is going to have to realize that he's running through, and they can't mark everybody.
right,
So yeah, those deep runs they're very effective.
and he's starting to put some goals away. So it's working out on that end as well. Yeah, I mean we'll kind of see how this works for next week. I mean to quickly kind of stay on Arsenal. I guess we won't really touch on Spurs. It is what it is. You get the red card.
Yeah.
You scored 6 goals for us, Leicester. There you go. Um, the thing. What did I want to say? Oh, with Arsenal and Liverpool is they played each other basically 4 times last year. I don't know if you kind of remember all 4 games. The first game was actually relatively close. It was a dogfight. It was at Anfield, and then Arteta and Klopp got into a little skiff.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And then the Liverpool got a goal from Mane. I think it was like 1-0 at halftime. And then they were able to kind of bully Tavares a little bit about pressing him. And it ended up winning like 4-0, 4-1. Or maybe, yeah, I think it was 4-0. But it wasn't really a 4-0 kind of game. And then they turn around. They played twice in the semifinal. There was an early red card in the first one. And then Jota ended up getting, I think, 2 goals in the second one. And then in the final game, at the Emirates. I think Liverpool won 2-0. That was another dogfight game, and frankly, Allison was amazing in stopping 1v1s. And you saw an improvement just from the earlier the season last year to that March game. And so, personally, for me, I look at how Liverpool have attacked Arsenal in the past. I don't think it's going to work this time, and I'm
Hmm.
significantly worried. You know, the contrarian, I guess, could say, well, Trent Alexander-Arnold has gotten Gary Neville going on like Monday Night Football for Sky Sports, basically talking about how bad he's been at defending. So maybe that kind of pops him up, and maybe Trent has the game of his life. But I look at that side of Martinelli, and I look at maybe Zinchenko, and I look at them just kind of being able to overload that side. I think at least Arsenal are going to get a couple of chances to run in behind. So I'm quite terrified of this game, to be honest. I'm a little more pessimistic than you.
I don't know. Yeah, I'm honestly worried about just the speed of Diaz or Nunez and Salah. If Shaka's going up and Zinchenko gets kind of called out, and it's Gabriel 1-on-1 versus Salah, ooh, I don't know how I feel about that. Depends on how often it happens too. We'll see. But also, I mean, Champions League this week and Europa League, so it's hard to tell. Like, who's going to be leggy. I mean, for us at least, Arsenal, we're not in the Champions League, so we don't necessarily have to play our best players. We can kind of rotate a little bit.
Oh, that definitely
Um,
helps. I forgot about that.
yeah, but also a extra day off.
So Arsenal
Do y'all
away.
play today?
Do you know?
Yeah,
Yeah, Liverpool
I can't
plays today.
remember. Today. Okay, so it's 2 extra days off too for Liverpool. So who knows?
Hopefully
Arteta will
Arsenal
probably have
travel.
to rotate. They're playing Bodo Glimt.
Go to
I don't know
Switzerland.
where.
Um,
Let me look. It will Bodo Glimt's in Norway, so they might have to go to friggin' Norway.
Just any kind of travel, I guess, would be good for the legs. Because I look at if there's maybe a game where you could see maybe this could kind of backfire, at least the way Arsenal have been playing, is
At home.
the way they play Odegaard. Because sometimes he doesn't necessarily work in a game where Arsenal aren't necessarily the dominant team with the ball. There'll be a lot of running without the ball, you imagine, but at the same time, Liverpool are playing senior citizens in midfield these days, so I don't know. And that kind of is we talked a little bit about Arsenal. We'll talk Liverpool. That kind of gets to the other game. Liverpool Brighton. This game does end 3-3. It is De Zerbi ball debut. So
Mhm.
that is nice. The lineup for Liverpool. The kind of I guess headlines was Simikas got the start over Robinson. I think Robinson's not fit still, and then Fabio Carvalho because Diaz had international duty and I guess had tired legs. Diaz was able to come on in the second half, and then the subs kind of tell the story in this game as well. And then for Brighton, you saw a similar formation, but one kind of tweak you saw was Trossard was actually played a little bit more advanced, and Estupiñán was the wing back, and oh, man, did that work out well for Brighton. I mean, it got started early with two Trossard goals, kind of similar fashion. Um, I guess I'll kind of do a rundown quickly on like what happened with the goals, and then kind of just do a spiel. Um, I mean, you can curse Jordan Henderson, you can curse Trent Alexander-Arnold. Really for both of them. It's a great touch by Welbeck for the first Trossard goal. Welbeck is really if he can find form. I mean, stay fit. Uh, there's
Mhm.
no reason to write Brighton off as a top four team. The way that they pass because they're I would argue they're a better team than Spurs player to player with the ball at their feet. They're more technical side,
Mhm.
even though they kind of play the similar formations. Um,
Mhm.
Firmino was able to get a goal back for Liverpool in a kind of a shaky decision. I was amazed VAR didn't call that offsides. Firmino was able to get a second, and then there was an own goal. It was poor by Sanchez on a corner kick, and then Trossard was able to basically get the point back that they definitely earned. As an assist by Matoma. Matoma came on, so that was big. And then towards the very end, Trent had a free kick attempt that was saved by Sanchez that was going in. But I mean, everyone. This was kind of what I was really worried about. I'll just kind of get a couple thoughts out and then kind of ask you, and we'll kind of do what I guess we did with Arsenal. Um, my big fear was that after watching how they played in that Napoli game, that just getting Thiago back, I didn't think was going to fix that because I remembered how they performed versus Fulham, and you kind of saw that happen again. Jordan Henderson was almost not even playing a position. So many times he's supposed to be the central midfielder, and what that means is you stay on the right side, but that also means, hey, you cover for Trent sometimes. You offer some width if you can, but you stay on the right side. And too often he was drifting in the middle. I think he's doing this because he doesn't run a run. There's less running to do in the middle of the field, to be honest, because if there are more guys you
Yeah.
can mark, and you can just kind of you can point, and you can point to hey Trent, you have the whole right side to yourself. Do that. Now, a lot of people have been wanting Elliott to play more than Henderson. I kind of used to be that way too, but both are so bad off the ball. It's a detriment, to be honest. I mean, Elliott is better on the ball, but off the ball is where the issue is. Off the ball is where they're not able to press like they used to. Um,
Mhm.
I texted to Jeremy. This looks like a pro team in their prime versus a team of senior citizens, because even when Liverpool were able to kind of get numbers near Brighton on the ball, they didn't have the legs to get them to turn it over. Brighton were able to just kind of skate by them. That happened over and over again. And the reason why I say Brighton deserved the point is, frankly, Brighton could have scored 4 or 5 in the first half. Allison made a number of really big saves. Liverpool were all over the place, and for not having played in 30 days, now some had international duty. That is what it is. This was shaky. This was unsettling, to be honest. Like there's been kind of a fear that um, yeah, I've tried to say that the end of the cycle is already happened. I've kind of talked about that a little bit more. This was less of a me kind of thinking that that theory is right and more confirmation. And I'll kind of get to that as well. I mean, Diaz did kind of change the game a little bit in the second half. They were able to kind of get things back. Fabio Carvalho did not look good in that left wing spot. They didn't know how to press with
Yeah.
him. We'll kind of get started there. I mean, what were your first takeaways?
Well, I was really impressed by Brighton. It, I kind of figured that they would drop off a little bit, at least for the first couple games after losing Potter.
Mhm.
And they kind of just came in and they kind of played Potter ball still, which is good. Zerby coming in. Hopefully, he's like, I don't want to change the way we play. We're playing well, so hopefully he'll kind of keep things kind of the same. And he did, and I think it paid off. I'm also happy to see Trossard getting his due. He's a really good player. He's going to be playing for Belgium. He might be
Maybe
pushing for starting time,
maybe
right?
most
Then I mean,
underrated player in the league at the
mhm.
moment, to be
Yeah,
honest.
he really is. Last year too, he put together. He started really hot last year and kind of cooled off, but he puts together great seasons. So I'm glad to see him getting his due.
Mhm.
We'll probably see him in the World Cup. He'll definitely play. I don't know if he'll be a regular starter, but yeah, I was glad to see him. Obviously Casado, McAllister's underrated. So it was just good to see this team kind of stick with what they were doing with Potter, and it paid off. I'm glad they got the point from it. And Liverpool do have issues, but you kind of called Firmino. You said Firmino has to step up and score and start to contribute, and he got a brace. So maybe he's heating up as well. And if you get him and a couple other guys firing, um, you know, I just don't know. I'm worried too about the defense. And if Trent Alexander is getting called out defensively because he pushes up so much, like why isn't Henderson covering for him then? Like you said, that's his job, and he's right center mid, and he's like playing everywhere but right center mid at times.
Yeah, I mean, to kind of focus on the defense, even on the third goal, this is maybe kind of grasping at straws, but I think Virgil van Dijk, if he is even with Matip, it's Matoma when he makes his run is offside, or it would have been
Right.
close. Like another thing I've noticed too is when Virgil is defending, his first thought is to run backwards or to try to immediately try to run forward without anyone else. He's not in sync with this center back pairing anymore. And
Mhm.
you can understand that with Gomez, and that's kind of what happened with Napoli. But he should understand how Matip plays, and there's disconnect there. I mean, Virgil is all the way by himself. He's kind of with Milner. Milner should not have come on in that second half as well. Klopp has started to do this weird thing where he understands Milner can't play in midfield now, but he has to have Milner on the field for some. I guess he's a great general.
Yeah.
Um, so what
Yeah,
he's
he
done,
must be.
he's started to bring off um, the fullbacks. So he did it versus Trent versus Everton. That failed, and he did it for Tsimikas. I don't know if Tsimikas is on a minutes restriction. Maybe that kind of explains it. But Milner came on, and that is frankly why Brighton were able to get able to get to the tying goal. We are going to touch on Trent a little bit. Klopp spoke about him before the game on Friday. He was asked about him, and he kind of went on a rant defending him, basically saying that Gareth Southgate and other people in the media don't understand his unique role in the counter press. That's why he's so often out of position, because you press high. And basically, he talked about how it is important to defend as a unit, and if you don't have Trent pressing high, it doesn't necessarily work. And the reason why you do
Mm.
that, you can just a ball over the top kind of beats you. If you're quick enough to the ball, teams can't do that pass. And so basically, he's saying 9 out of 10 times Liverpool actually win the ball back, and they're able to actually start a counter attack on themselves. Like it's easier to defend higher up than it is kind of sitting back. That's at least Klopp's philosophy. And the only issue I had with that, and I actually tweeted about it in real time, is it's not the times when Trent's been out of position that have been the issue with me. It's when he actually has been positioned. You've seen people just easily jog past him. I saw it versus United. I
Mm.
saw it versus Newcastle, Crystal Palace, and I saw it in this game. You saw it in this game. Um, for the second goal, Welbeck, Trent does something weird with his chest. He loses the ball first, and then he allows Welbeck to kind of slip in behind him. So that was an issue. He hasn't necessarily been great with the ball at his feet either, but I think he's been asked to do too much. I've kind of talked about that as well. Um, I mean, I talked about cycle. I think one thing to kind of say is in a weird way, this shouldn't. This isn't necessarily coming as a surprise. Um, and what's crazy to say is you can go back to maybe even February of last season, where this was starting to kind of show up, and that sounds crazy because they won basically every game they played in last season. Um, but when you go back, a lot of teams scored that where those goals didn't count because it was like millimeters from being offsides. VAR saved them. Another thing that happened is Allison was incredible in 1v1s. He stopped almost anyone that was past him. So
Right.
teams could have scored way more goals than they did. And you kind of notice whenever I do kind of readouts on teams, I focus on XG because XG tells me how a team performed. Um, Not necessarily, and I think that is more important than necessarily the actual win or result because I think over time, the XG pans out. I think if you follow a team's XG, usually that kind of says expected goals. Usually that
Mhm.
shows how a team plays over the course of a season than necessarily actual wins and losses, if that makes sense. So
Right.
I think we're kind of
It's,
starting to kind of see a reversion
yeah.
of the mean. To be honest, I think when you look at the midfield, the way Klopp likes to play, you're playing with guys that just are not athletic and physical anymore to dominate. Like the way Klopp plays his 4-3-3 is he requires two eights to basically two box to box guys, but also you have to track runners behind you. You have to have energy to be able to close down guys. You have to be there to win second balls. It's very
Mhm.
demanding, to be honest. And
It is. Yeah.
you're asking guys that don't have the bodies. Like Fabio Carvalho is 5'7", 130 pounds. Um, uh, Elliott's kind of the same. Elliott's a little stockier, but he's kind of the same way. Henderson doesn't have the legs anymore, and so you're playing a system that is reliant on that midfield being an engine and winning the ball back and being good in transition. And you haven't invested in 3 years in a midfielder other than Thiago, who also has injury issues. They
Hmm.
went into the season knowing that Keita had fitness issues, and they didn't address it. So this is frankly an investment issue. So you can get on Klopp, you can get on the players for not necessarily turning up. The players have to be knackered. The players did not
Hmm.
have an off. They hardly had an off season. They played every game they could last year, and they were basically a game or two from winning a quad. That's not easy. The mindset's not easy to all of a sudden switch on and off. A lot of these
Hmm.
players have been with Klopp for 5 or 6 years, and another issue too is since that time. So they lost to Man City by a point in 2017. Or 2018? What did they do? They turned around and won. They lost the Champions League in 2017, 2018. What did they do in 19? They won, but they've
Hmm.
since won. They've since turned around and already won those things. They've won everything you can at the club level, and they're older now. So you can understand maybe then someone not necessarily as hungry to run as hard or to train. And so I think you're kind of seeing some of that too. And again, that's not necessarily on the players, even though they're winning,
Right.
they're earning wages. That is on the club not reinvesting when you should. You had a
Mm.
time when Liverpool were winning all these titles and doing well, and every summer was the same thing, no activity. Or maybe there would be a loan here and there. Maybe they would bring in an
Mm.
18-year-old and loan him out. That is just not a way to run a football club, and I think you're finally starting to see that. Um,
Yeah, especially with the gig and press style that Klopp does, like you mentioned, it really does wear out your legs, quicker than other systems. So,
exactly.
yeah,
Oh,
you would think
100%.
like, especially in the midfield too, which is the area that they have quite possibly invested the least in, with Klopp. So, I mean, yeah, I don't get it other than, they make some stretch signings too, like Arthur. I don't know about that. I would really like them to go out and get
Out of
like a
desperation, too.
marquee.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not. I mean, I wouldn't foresee them picking up a marquee midfielder in January because it's just not the market. You'd have to spend a lot of money. So maybe this summer. But I mean, they got to get top four too. And if they don't, I don't know, things might change, and you might not get the opportunity to buy a top rated center midfielder if you're not in the Champions League.
And I want to say it definitely would not be a blessing. It would be crushing. But this talk about them spending 100+ million for Bellingham needs to stop. That they just you don't need to do that, especially when you've got a club that literally doesn't invest their own money. It's a self-sustaining club, so what they win in revenue over the season is what they put out. So that's the reason why they don't spend much. Um, and it's I mean, you look at what some of the midfielders that went to other clubs this season. Mateus Nunes, Amadou Onana, is flying for Everton. Um,
Yeah.
there are so many names that you can. I'm just bad at names right now. This fix would have been $40 million max. You maybe needed to do this before addressing Darwin Nunes, and that kind of is another thing too. Another part of this like press thing is your front attackers have to be the first line of defense, and
Right.
uh, I don't want to necessarily say that's necessarily been a problem, but one thing that does tire your legs out maybe faster than it otherwise would, and so
Mhm.
there's been a lot of talk about Liverpool missing Mane, and I've long had the idea that this is foolish. I'm now come around to the idea of Liverpool do miss Mane, but not in the way people think. Liverpool
Mhm.
miss 2017 and 2019 through 2019 Mane. Basically, the guy
Mm.
was Mbappe on the ball. He could take anyone 1v1. In any kind of tight spaces, he could get around players. Either cutting inside or going to the byline. He was an amazing reaction finisher, but just a
Mm.
ridiculous presser, and win the ball high upfield
Yeah, that's
all the
true.
time as well. But the issue is the Mane that left the club last year was not that player, so they sold him at the right time. I'm not gonna actually go at them for that. Bringing in Darwin
Yeah.
Nunes is not necessarily the same player, and it's a player they haven't necessarily had before, other than Origi. And I think another issue that you're seeing is Klopp is trying to play the same 4-3-3 kind of system that he's played with for like 5, 6 seasons, and he's brought in players since then. Fabio Carvalho is a 10. He's not a winger or he's not a midfielder. You've got players to maybe play a 4-2-3-1, and by doing that, you're going to lose some games where you're not going to have nearly as much of the ball as you've had in the past, and
Mhm.
it's going to affect your pressing. It's going to affect how you win second balls. You may even be more of a counter-attacking team. But this is what these are the kind of profiles that you brought into the club. You almost need to make the switch. I don't know if Klopp's capable of doing that, and I'm very fearful of that
Ooh, yeah.
because so many of these years, Firmino was able to make up for not necessarily having the best creative midfield because he was basically the midfield creator. He would drop back and he would find Salah and Mane. So you play Darwin in kind of a Firmino role, that's not going to work either. And you don't have midfield, you don't have a Kevin De Bruyne or Gundogan or Bernardo Silva to plug in to avoid a press and to also find that ball that Darwin wants on the ground. You don't.
Mhm.
So it's yeah. I mean, in some ways, I'm not terribly surprised. I wasn't necessarily as high on Liverpool as I guess some people were to start the
Mhm.
season, mostly because I've seen this before. I've seen them not do investment and it almost backfire. And so I think we're kind of seeing that too. Another thing too,
Time it is.
I mentioned a couple episodes ago is they went through a different director. They lost Michael Edwards, and I think the guy that they brought in scouts people differently. I don't. I think he trusts names, or there's been a lot of focus on the Portuguese league. I don't think they're doing what Michael Edwards did, where they basically looked at advanced stats. They looked at underperforming expected threat, underperforming expected goals, and that's the reason they were able to
Mm.
find Firmino, Mane, and Salah as these gems the way they did. Is they saw that hey,
Right.
these guys are underperforming. Let's put them in a better system. Let's give them a little
Mm.
bit more supply and see if that'll pan out. So
Yeah,
there's
and you
just
don't have to overpay either.
so there has been a lot of transition and change in everything around the club, and the only issue now is there hasn't been change the way Klopp is managing, and that kind of gets into my last final point. Sorry to kind of go on a rant, Rex. Is is one thing to kind of worry about the players performing as they are. It's another thing to worry how Klopp is doing lineups and doing subs. Um, so to kind of I've kind of talked about it before. To bring Milner on in that second half was insane. I don't understand, and he's played Milner in I want to, but they played like 8 games so far, 8 games in the league. I
Yeah.
guess maybe 10 Champions League. He's Milner's probably played in all in. I don't know if all 8 EPL games are close to it. He's
Let's do it.
almost
Yeah.
played in 90% of the games. Started in some of them. Starting in midfield in some of them. You don't. Now, injuries have maybe kind of forced a little of that, but Klopp over the years, if there has been maybe one massive critique to him, is he doesn't let go of players. If anyone's kind of been with him to the battle lines, he'll go with them no matter what, regardless of if their legs are gone. And you don't see you don't City's owners are able to kind of just get guys in and out no matter what. They don't care about the financial losses, but you don't see any kind of that turnover. Like the team City had in 2018 is not the team that they have now. Um,
Right.
the team that Liverpool had in 2018, they have 9 of their 11 still.
Crazy.
Sorry, sorry, Rex. I kind of
Mhm.
wanted to get that
Yeah.
out there.
Your team.
I guess that is mostly mostly it. I mean, one kind of final thing to say about Brighton is uh, De Zerbi kind of did the same thing that Potter did, but another thing too is he made the right call to bring on Matoma when he did, and I think really that one
Yeah.
change is got them back in the game because frankly Liverpool did kind of have the better of them in that second half. Luis Diaz gave them a lot of fits that they weren't necessarily experiencing in that first half, and they
Mhm.
were able to kind of win something back. So okay. I'll try to clip that. I said it's an EPL show. It's a Liverpool Arsenal show. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll
And
uh,
City.
we'll
Yeah.
get there we go. Well, we'll get to the Chelsea and Palace. This one ends 2-1. Really not a whole lot of changes for Chelsea's lineup. Crystal Palace. I didn't even do Crystal Palace's on the thing. Um, I mean, the first goal actually comes from Odson Edward. We've talked about it before. You like him. Um,
Yeah. He hadn't played that much this year, but yeah, I mean, last year he had a decent year from Celtic. So yeah, I do like him as an option, and Chris Pass has a couple options now, which is kind of weird saying because usually they don't. But yeah, I'm a fan of him.
and then Aubameyang was able to get one back. Actually, the couple things we can say is two guys for Chelsea got their first goal for the club. So Aubameyang was the first. It's a very good finish. But a little insult to injury because before this, there is I would say a blatant Thiago Silva handball, and it
Oh
stops
yeah,
basically a Palace counterattack. I think it's a for sure red. I was amazed it wasn't given as a red. Even more amazed VAR didn't overturn this. I mean,
Mm.
what did you think about this?
Yeah, man. It was tough because I guess it was Silva was the last man, but I guess because he was far enough out, like out in midfield, that it wasn't like a scoring situation per se or an obvious scoring situation. So I guess
Ooh, I disagree
that's
with
why
that.
he got. But yeah, I mean, he was 1-on-1, and who is he on? Zaha, and Zaha's in there, I think.
I think it's Edward.
Oh, Edward,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Because he was like, I mean, he was the last defender. So I guess it's the yellow because he was higher up the pitch and it wasn't close enough to the box. But if it's 1-on-1, it kind of doesn't matter, right? I mean, if you're like right at midfield, I get that. But it was kind of like,
It's a goal. It's a goal.
it
It's a goal scoring
was like,
opportunity. I
what do
think.
you think it was like 40 yards out, 30 yards out? So yeah, it probably was a goal scoring opportunity.
I
One
think
on
so.
one,
I
you get
mean,
beat.
maybe Chilwell is kind of running into the screen just at the end. I don't think he gets there. Edward's got good pace to him. Um, so I was amazed by that. Frankly, this is the second time. You should be upset about this too. This is the second time in as many weeks that Chelsea have kind of gotten a big break to go their way. I can think back to the one versus West Ham. And
Mm.
so when you think
Yeah,
about how
true.
close maybe top four is going to be, one
Those
point one
decisions.
point versus three, or maybe they lose this game. That can matter. And then unfortunately at the end for Palace fans, their player of the season last year came back to haunt them with a beautiful goal by Conor Gallagher.
Yeah.
Um,
Didn't
it's
celebrate either.
good for
And
him. Yeah.
he actually, yeah, the Crystal Palace fans were applauding
When he
him
came on, they
when
gave
he
him a
came
standing
on.
ovation. Yeah.
Yeah, so I really wanted him to link back up with Palace again for another year because he was amazing. And I don't like. I think this Palace team, they're not doing that great, but I think they're still hard to beat. And if they had Gallagher again, maybe like another year alone, they'd be really
I,
fun to watch.
I wouldn't
They're
be
already fun
worried.
to watch.
I wouldn't be worried about them. I think
Yeah,
I
no,
would put it
not at
that
all.
way because right
Mhm.
now, I think you maybe agree because I think they actually are in like 17th or 18th, 16th
Yeah.
place. Um, they don't necessarily keep the ball enough for me. I'm kind of worried about that. I know they're mostly counterattacking team anyways, but last year it seemed like Vieira actually did want to kind of have the ball. They seemed to pass the ball a little bit better last season. I don't know if Gallagher was part of that or not.
Probably.
They
Yeah.
also had Kurate back. They brought in Decore, who's a little different. But I mean that's just that's not necessarily on Vieira. I mean
Yeah.
I guess one thing we can kind of focus on is Pulisic got an assist.
Yeah.
Came
Off the
on,
bench, got an assist.
didn't look bad. Potter apparently
Yeah.
spoke well of him. So
Good. Yeah,
may-
we need him playing.
maybe good things to see. And another thing that was interesting is Potter did go with a back four in this game. So he went with a back three with wingbacks versus I think it was Salzburg in the Champions
Yeah.
League a couple weeks back. He played well back as a wingback, and he didn't do that this game, and so that is interesting. And
Yeah.
another
Jorginho and Kovacic sitting deep too, helping out.
another thing that kind of I mentioned insult to injury with that Aubameyang goal. It's Thiago Silva that gets the header. It's Thiago Silva played a role in Chelsea getting a goal back, and so you think maybe with him off the pitch that goal doesn't even happen. I mean, well, kind
Yeah.
of quickly, what are your thoughts on Aubameyang? What do you think he's going to do this season?
I don't know. I don't think he's going to be terrible, but I also don't think he's going to be great. I don't know. I honestly, maybe it's just me because I'm an Arsenal fan. I'm kind of mad at Aubameyang, but I feel like he is past his prime. But he's still a good finisher. I think he's going to offer goals. But I don't think he's necessarily going to be like a 20 goal striker for them. But I don't. I guess they don't really need that per se either. I mean, they just need him to chip in with goals, and then just have other people because they don't have like a Lukaku a couple years ago. When he scores 20 plus goals, they don't really have that guy, so they kind of just need everyone in attack to chip in, and so I think Aubameyang will do that. But I think he's kind of like a stopgap for this season,
Hmm.
and then maybe you'll see them get like a real number nine, like they can bang in 20 plus goals kind of guy, and then maybe you'll see Aubameyang kind of it might be the same thing that happened to Aubameyang at Barca,
Well, they're
where
linked.
Chelsea might get, their Lewandowski and Aubameyang's kind of like, okay, well, on to the next place.
Well, they're linked to Nkuku all of a sudden, like really heavily. There's some talks they even have a pre agreement signed for next season. But I don't
He's a
think
good player.
I don't think he is. I he was someone I wanted him, not Darren.
Not a striker, though.
Right, he's more of a false nine-ish lake up guy, or he can play on the wing. And so that is interesting. To kind of
I already have
because
like Gallagher, Mount. Like that's a loaded spot for them.
I think that would be bad
Not
for
wing per se.
I think that would be bad for Havertz. To be
Yeah,
honest, yeah.
yeah. You'd be the odd man out
Yeah,
of
I
that
think so.
group. Yeah,
Yeah, and it is one thing that's interesting is I actually thought Aubameyang did well to kind of drop back and link up in this game. He wasn't just kind of just staying at the box. One kind of thing that was weird when I saw him at Arsenal is too often. I don't know if you kind of remember this. It was almost like he was played at left wing, and then it would cut
yeah.
in from the left. He was
Hmm.
more central in this game. So I don't know if maybe at age he's kind of adapted to where he is, but I think that was an interesting tweak as well.
Hmm. Yeah, I think he prefers the striker role up top, as opposed to the left wing cutting in. But yeah, he did kind of do that with Lacazette at striker at Arsenal. So yeah, weird. It's I don't know. It's weird to see him at Chelsea, honestly.
In London
But
too.
in London, yeah, really weird.
All right, and we'll move on to Newcastle versus Fulham. This one ends 4-1. It's a very early red card. So this is a lot worse for Fulham than maybe it should have been. And Chalobah after 8 minutes. But the reason why this happened is probably their player of the season. Well, not other than Mitrovic. I'll put it that way. Is Paulinho. Paulinho wasn't able to play this game because he was yellow carded out. So that was he was suspended too many yellow cards. So that's the reason why Paulinho wasn't able to start. And you think maybe with him in, maybe this is a different game. To be honest, because there was no Saint Maxian. Alexander Isak, who's been starting a number of games, wasn't able to go. He got injured for Sweden. But you had Wilson back. But really, I guess the star of the show was Miguel Almiron. I think we'll kind of go there. I mean, first, I mean, What did you kind of see this game, or what did you think of Amaron?
Well, he Almiron's like a tricky player to kind of like to figure out. He's very streaky.
That's a good
But
way to put it.
yeah, but like he had a great game. And he's got 3 goals in 8 games, so he's not doing bad, honestly. I think he's someone that can really help out, with his creativity. It's just, he's very streaky, and that's a problem at times. But now, Newcastle kind of have the players where if he needs a rest or if he's not playing well, they can put in another good player, and having Wilson back is crucial. It helped out here because Isaac was hurt.
Yep,
So it's kind of the same situation there where it's like if Wilson can't go, we have Isaac. If Isaac can't go, we have Wilson. It's kind of the same thing now with like Almiron and I mean, who else can play? Like Frazier,
I mean
Saint Maximin,
Jacob Murphy played as
Jacob Murphy.
in Tim Maxian spot, and actually, honestly, he didn't look that bad either. I'd almost forgotten about
He's
him.
pretty he's pretty pacey. I saw him play one of the games, and he didn't like it was a blowout, and that's why he was subbed on. But he was fast. So it's more options, and this squad is building, and they're building depth, and they have some depth in some places now too. Where you can afford an injury to a big player. Where last year maybe St. Maximin's out, and their offense kind of goes away with that.
Definitely, yeah,
Now and or Wilson goes out and you lose like all those goals. Now they kind of have more options. So I mean that's what you need. That's what we're talking about when you're trying to like compete to be in the top of the table or near the top, maybe competing for Europa League spots. Is you need that depth. And if you're going to be in not posting, but if you're going to be in Europe, you need more depth there too. And the squad is building, and they haven't done it the way Forest has with 20 new players in one window. They're piecing it together nicely, which is it's good to see because they have a lot of money now. I don't want them to just buy a whole bunch of players, kind of like Forest did, and they're puzzling. They're putting the puzzle pieces together, which just helps build the squad. It's not just a bunch of 20 guys that haven't played together. They're just slowly kind of adding, not necessarily stars either, just really good, solid players. They're not overpaying for some of these players, which is nice to see because they do have the money to just go out and buy,
pretty much.
anyone that would play there.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking to Mbappe kind of jokingly, but I mean, they have the pull to at least without Champions League, obviously. But
Yeah,
they could, and you think about the wages, but they could really do a little bit more than what they've done, which is kind of been surprising. But
yeah, that's true too.
one thing that's kind of wild, you think back just a year ago, Almiron was on the team that, Sean Longstaff, Murphy was on that team, Joe Linton was on that team, that
So,
everyone basically wrote off as this is a for sure team that's going to get relegated under Steve Bruce because they hadn't won it. I don't think they had won a point at this point in the season last year.
yeah,
So
yeah, they're doing dreadful.
Eddie Howe has done some black magic because what he did with Joe Linton was amazing, but I think what he's doing with Miguel Almiron it surpasses that because this is a guy that he's always been a good runner. We actually know him a little bit from the MLS, but
Yeah, Atlanta.
he's come to the league and kind of struggled. And it's not necessarily been fitness issues. He's always been just almost like a deer in the headlights when it came to the final in ball, either shot or pass. And he came into the. I remember reading about him actually in the preseason, and he had something like 6 goals in 2 games, and he's I guess carried some confidence from that preseason into this. You mentioned the 3 goals. He had 4 all of last season. I think he had 1 all of last season. His highest total is 4.
Dang.
And
So he's almost at that already.
I mean, did you see the finish he had for his first goal?
Yeah,
It's like goal of the
incredible.
season contender. Like you don't do that if you're not confident.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and
definitely.
he also finished a third goal. He was called off sides, but you showed he's getting calmer in front of goal. I mean, he's always been a very good runner, both making runs and kind of getting behind, but also win the ball back. So
Yeah.
he's always been someone I guess you could sort of root for in that respect. But another thing that Howell has done is Joe Willock looks a different player to me. Now he maybe needs to fix his passing a little bit, but watching him, I get the sense that I'm watching like a young Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. The way he's able to cut
Hmm.
with pace, to be honest. I mean, he kind of looks like Jacob Ramsey too on the ball. He's good at running, um, but I think he's gotten calmer as well. But he is a he is a terrorizer when it comes to pressing as well.
Yeah,
He was just getting Fulham to turn the ball over left and right as well. Like they were missing Joe Linton, and he had played Willock instead. It didn't bother them. So I think
and he can
that's
add a big goal or two if need be, because we saw Willock score. I guess it was at the end of 2020
oh he scored
where he scored
it's like
a
70.
couple to keep them in the Premier League.
He's the
So,
reason why they stayed up that season. Yeah.
mhm. Was it 2020? Yeah, 2020. 2021? I don't know.
And I mean, for Fulham, we kind of touched on the red card. Maybe the one negative is you maybe starting to see their depth kind of show up a little bit because Mitrovic ended up getting an ankle injury. We don't necessarily know what to think about that. I guess there'll be more
Mm.
reports later in the week. They're missing. I think they're missing Anton Robinson, to be honest.
Me too. Yeah, me
And
too.
you mentioned Paulina, and another thing too is I saw the scoreline beforehand before watching the highlights, and I was really worried about Tim Ream because we kind of spent all this time talking about, well, why isn't him in the
Oh,
lineup?
she should be on USA. Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think he's at fault for any of these goals. And one thing that's even better is he actually has a little role in the one goal that they do score towards the end. He's getting pressed and he gets by a guy and has a really good pass on the ground, like a 20-yard pass to the middle of the field to a guy that he ends up passing it to the wide, and that's how they end up getting their attack. But you know, compare this to what I saw with Aaron Long just last week for Saudi Arabia. He was literally passing the ball to Saudi Arabia without being pressed at all. I did this
Yeah.
multiple times. And it's not like Aaron Long is like fleet of foot either. That was
Mhm.
enough for me to think Berhalter needs to shape up here.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. Reem's been playing every game too. So yeah, go with someone that's in form and is playing regularly in the Premier League. And
Also,
he was partnered with Kuzawa, who's a new arrival. So that couldn't have been easy either. Being
true.
partnered with him down the left side instead of Robinson. So yeah, I mean that's a good shout. We talked about that last week too, and hopefully Reem's there at least on the bench come World Cup time.
And you think of like that pairing between him potentially and Robinson. Well, he's already done that. He like knows how Robinson
Yeah.
plays.
Oh yeah, that'd be great.
That just
That would
makes
would help because we look like we haven't played together, USA. So
too
get a
much
couple
sense to
guys
me.
that are playing together. Yeah, it does make sense.
So of course Bearholter's not going to do it.
Probably not.
All right, and we'll keep it going with West Ham and Wolves. This one ends 2-0 with goals from new boy Skamaka, and I think it's his first goal for West Ham or first in the league.
Premier League
I think
goal.
he scored
Yeah.
in Conference League, and then Bowen gets
Hmm.
his first in the league as well this season. And so, frankly, just my kind of thought was this was desperately needed for West Ham to
Hmm.
state the obvious. And you saw maybe Moyes go with a different lineup than he's gone with Basti. He started Cornet and Skamaka together. We haven't seen that yet, and it didn't necessarily go well for Cornet, but definitely well for Skamaka. And another thing too is he doesn't necessarily show up on the stat sheet, but I think this was the first game where Paqueta also looked comfortable on the ball. And so when you think of like Rice and Suchek just aren't enough. You need someone else to be kind of a provider or someone
Yeah,
to offer
creator in
themselves
there.
when being pressed to like show for the ball. 'Cause sometimes they don't
Hmm.
like Rice is a good running with the ball, but he's not the best passer to be honest. And so
Yeah.
Suchek's kind of the same way, and so I think Paqueta helped in this game as well. He did a couple of nice link ups, one more duels than he did for Everton, so that's good too. I mean, he looked off it for Everton, and when you think about it, this is a guy that very likely could be starting for Brazil, in Qatar.
Mhm.
He's the name I forgot last week, because he started in Copa for them, or came on and played in Copa, and he got started in the last two games for Brazil. So it's like this is clearly a player. So
He played
we'll
well in Copa too.
we'll see if that pans out. Well, and unfortunately, we got to talk a little bit about Wolves as well because this game had consequences. Um, maybe some deserved, and maybe not. I mean, Bruno Lage did get let go after this. What did you think of that decision?
I mean, it's tough only because their defense has been so good. They've only given up 9 goals. I mean, that's tied for second in the league. Like Man City has given up 9 goals. So you're talking about big teams. They're hanging with them defensively, but man, 3 goals scored. That's less. That's double. Like Nottingham Forest just scored double that. That's 6. Villa scored double that. Bournemouth scored double that.
Mhm.
So ultimately, I think it's the right call because you can have the best defense in the world, and if you're only going to score 3 goals, you're just not going to get it done. And it's all about finding that balance because defensively they're fine. Their defense is good enough for them to be in the top half of the league, but offensively it's dreadful. It's nowhere close. So I think it is a good decision. Now they haven't really backed Laga with attacking players per se. Costa missed a chance here, and then he had an assist that was called offsides.
Mhm.
So maybe he can help. But yeah, I think it was the right decision. They're just not scoring enough goals. You need to find a balance there. It stinks because he did have the defense organized, and I think that's the route. If you're going to try to hang around, that's a good route to take. To back your defense. But when it's at so much expense of the offense, it's not working, and I think it's the right decision.
Huh.
3 goals is dreadful. 3 goals in 8 games
Mhm.
is horrid. So whoever's coming in has their work cut out for them to try to get this team to score. But at least you have you know, the solid brick foundation, the nice base of that defense. It's going to be a job though to get him to score. Costa, we'll see if he's the answer. Probably not, but
He's going to have to be honest. When you look at the
he's going to
squad,
have to be. Yeah,
Neto, Grealish, and Podence, and it seems he's tried to give them all a chance. He's tried to give Wang a chance, and
yeah,
just all of them were kind of like wingers, wide players, creative 10 guys. In Podence's case, but you don't have any person to send a ball to. You don't have any kind of target man in there at all. And for the longest time, that is how Wolves kind of played. They were defensive, but they would get the ball out wide and they would cross the ball to Jimenez or
mhm,
find some kind of run for him. And with Jimenez came into the season with started with a muscle injury. It's possible he's never really recovered from that head injury, unfortunately. But
yeah.
I don't want to necessarily go there. Yeah, but he's been dealing with muscle injuries, and they spent $50 million to go get that's not class cash to go get this striker from Stuttgart, and
Oh yeah,
he
yeah.
got 20 minutes and then did his ACL. That's not on
Mhm.
Bruno Large's fault. What's weird is the owners have spent. I mean, they spent to get Mateus Nunes, but the thing that's kind of crazy to me is you're playing a mostly back three system, and you definitely see this here because they played a back three with Ruben Neves as the center back. The reason they did that is because Nathan Collins got a red card for City, so he wasn't able to go. But you're playing a mostly back three system. Why are you letting Connor Cody go to Everton for like
Yeah,
nothing?
yeah. I was gonna say
And why
yeah,
are you letting
and he's playing well for Everton.
Wilfred Boney go? I think he's at Forest now, and
While he's gone, yeah.
I mean, they spent money for the striker from Stuttgart and spent money on Mateus Nunes. Why wouldn't you spend money to extend Roman Sayas,
Oh yeah.
who was a good player
Slice was like
for them?
let go for free, right? He was just released.
Yeah, he had a contract dispute and went to. I think he's at Angers now. But it's like
Mm,
those kind of decisions were weird, and I don't know if that was on Large or like the actual directing side underneath him. So
mhm.
frankly, I mean, you look at the pieces are there for a striker to do well, and so if Costa can actually stay fit, I think he's enough to actually help him keep up. But
Mhm.
Costa hasn't played a game all season. He actually looked good to be. He looked a lot better than I was expecting. But
Yeah, I mean, he missed that first touch was like that header that he missed, but then after that, like I said, he whipped in that good ball. Um, was it a goal and it was called offsides, or
yes,
was it
yeah,
okay?
mhm.
Because there was also another good ball, and I think the striker just missed
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well. So
He
yeah, he did kind
he
of make an
he looks
impact.
good. Yeah, and it's just can he stay healthy? I guess because
And can he start
if so,
games? Because he's not going to give you,
well,
70 minutes max, right?
that too. You worry about that. But you can say maybe Adama Traore and him kind of looking pretty good together, if they can
Yeah.
if they can make that work. But if not, you do worry about this team as a relegation team. And you look at the number of players other than the striker, that should not happen. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know if that's on Large, to be honest, and I don't know who they can bring in that can fix this.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that's a big question too. Who are they going to get?
and so
I don't know.
yeah, well, that'll just be something to follow going forward.
Yeah.
Move on to Southampton and Everton. This one ends 1-2. Everton Lampard gets another win, two in a row for him. A couple interesting points for Everton. Pickford returned, but Nathan Patterson was injured now, and Anthony Gordon was rested. So the kind of goals and events. Aribo gets the first goal. It's really bad giveaway by Idrissa Gueye.
Mhm.
Southampton were kind of were able to break, and Aribo finishes the square ball to him in the box. It's a good pass by new center back Laios. Laios. I can't say names. He was making his debut, but he also does good. So he first wins the ball. Basically, Idrissa Gueye just passes it to him. So he runs onto a loose ball. He makes a good run, but he also continues his run and he goes wide. And what that does is it makes Guy kind of follow him, and that's what leaves Ariba open. So it's a good play by that center back. And then that was all the fun that Southampton had because Connor Cody got a one. Got Everton equalize. Uh, this all happened in quick succession, to be honest. And frankly, this goal is from Amadou Onana. He towers over. Uh, it might be Sigma Mara. I mean, Mara's not really
Mhm.
a defender. It's a free kick to Everton. It's pretty far out. It's a really good ball in, but oh man, Onana looked amazing, and
Yeah.
so that kind of helped. And then McNeil was able to get the second one for Everton. So I mean, the stats are kind of unfair to Southampton. They played a pretty good game, maybe even a better game. They had 7 shots blocked, so that shows you how Everton were defending. I mean, 22 shots, 6 on target, and they passed better. The XG was about even as well. So, what are your thoughts on either team or the game?
Uh, Well, Everton and Lampard have been really impressed with recently because
Hmm.
they started just terrible and it looked pretty bad, and they were making some signings that we were questioning whether or not they were they like real signings, or were they just grabbing at stopgaps to keep them afloat. Maybe Cody was one of them, and he's really stepped up because he scored a couple goals. This was a huge goal too. But I mean, just for Lampard to be able to get the team back on track, and they were drawing a lot of games for a while,
Hmm.
and we were kind of like, is this enough? And I think it was. It was enough to kind of keep them afloat and keep their confidence, at least not from sinking. And now they've won two in a row. They're in 11th place. Those ties look pretty good, and Lampard's done a really good job. Because they're missing players as well. We still don't know about Calvert Lewin.
Hmm.
They kind of got Mape in, and he's done a decent job too. So I just like the way Lampard gone about business with this squad. Maybe it's not a complete squad per se, but they're grinding out results, and now they're getting wins, and they're up to 11th. I think it's just been a really good job by Lampard, and the team is kind of turning into a pretty solid team, a team that's going to be hard to beat. And yeah, they did this without Gordon, and he might be one of their best offensive players. So to be able to do that and rest Gordon a little bit, which he's going to need a lot of rest because he's a young player, you don't want him hurt.
Sure.
It's outstanding. It's great. It's a great job by Lampard, and we talked about Onana's been a huge buy in the center of the park. Cody has ended up being a big buy as well. So they've done some good business. I was kind
Yeah,
of
the
critical of
guys
them
the guys they
in the
brought
beginning,
in
but
have
yeah,
all
not
have all
bad.
have all contributed. I mean, this is the first time we saw
Onana
like
might be the best of them of the bunch.
McNeil show up for them, and he showed up really big. But Onana played a role in McNeil's goal. They're trying to cross the ball into him, and Onana is such a presence that Kyle Walker Peters left McNeil to go try to mark him. And I think Kyle Walker Peters fouled Onana. So it's possible that even if McNeil had missed that shot, maybe VAR would have looked at that. But yeah, Onana looked really really good.
He's
And
been terrible.
He's been good. He's been good pretty much in any game. He had one like giveaway in that I think it versus like Aston Villa that led to like a goal, and then he's been flying. ever since that. And then you mentioned Cody, all the guys that he's brought in, Malpai as well. I mean, Malpai won their game versus West Ham last year or last week,
Hmm. Last
or
week, yeah.
yeah. And so
Or
well,
yeah, whenever
before
it was.
before the international break. God, that was so long ago.
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned how you can wonder maybe you don't know if the draws are necessarily worth something to worry about. Well, I guess maybe with a young team, maybe that instilled some confidence that, hey, we can
Hmm.
compete. We just need a couple other things to go their way because they're unbeaten in six now with four draws and two
Yeah,
wins.
it's quite a run, honestly, for that team. So yeah, yeah. I mean, if the two wins after the ties definitely makes the ties worth it. Because like if you're looking at two losses and then all those draws, it's two wins is more points than four draws.
And one of those
But with the wins on top of it, it helps out a lot.
draws is over your neighbor. So they definitely love that as well. I mean,
Oh yeah.
if there's one kind of negative, I don't want. It's not necessarily Cody. Cody's been very good, and not necessarily Tarkowski either. But maybe the defensive depth, because
Mm.
without Patterson, Seamus Coleman was brought in, and he didn't necessarily have the best game either. Like he actually, they almost allowed Southampton to tie the game at the very end because he wasn't necessarily marking his man. You don't necessarily
Mhm.
know when Mina's going to get back. So the defense they've been able to keep a lot of these clean sheets or not concede many goals because Pickford's been called on to make a ton of saves,
Yeah,
uh,
he's been clutch.
and it's been good to get him back. So it's not all rosy, but I mean, still from where they were last year, they can start to maybe feel a little bit more comfortable now.
And they just started the season terrible too.
And there's not really a ton to talk about with Southampton, other than I wanted to kind of get this out there. So they're tied for 16th now with 7 points with West Ham. Basically, the top 10 is it's either the top 10 or like basically starting with 11. You have Everton with 10 points, Leeds with 9, Bournemouth with 9, Aston Villa with 8, Crystal Palace tied with 6, Wolves on 6, Leicester 4, Forest 4. It is early, but it is October. Who do you think who are you most concerned about right now? Not necessarily who you think's going to drop, but at least right now, if they don't shape up, they're in trouble.
I mean, for me, it's Wolves and Nottingham Forest. Nottingham Forest has lost five in a row. Just with the talent that they have, they should be playing better. But I think it is a case of just too many players not used to playing with each other.
Yep, I
So
think yeah, it's fair.
like that's a huge concern. And then obviously for Wolves, just not being able to score, and then having a new coach come in, and we don't know who they're even going to get. So like that worries me with them too. I don't know. I think there's just enough stability around Southampton that they're going to be okay. Hasenhuttl has been there for a while and he's been in these situations. So that kind of puts them over the top. Whereas Wolves, aren't scoring and they're going to have a new coach that might not really, if there's a settling down period, that might root them closer to the bottom. And then, Nottingham just hasn't been able to really defend. They buy all these attacking players. Some of their defenders are hurt, so maybe that will help.
I mean,
But
we'll get
I mean, Leicester is bad, and they put a spanking on Forest, so I'm definitely worried about Forest.
yeah, we'll get to Forest and Leicester. I mean, actually, that'll be the next game. But I was amazed that they had Boney actually on the bench,
Oh yeah,
and it's just why are you still playing Cook and McKenna together? That just does not make sense to me. Um, I'm kind of with you. At least on Forest Wolves. I think they have enough to at least survive, especially when you're good defensively. You'll stay in most games. It just
yeah,
matters if they'll be able to if they can score enough to at least get.
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I'm kind of worried a little bit about Bournemouth and Southampton. Now Bournemouth have turned things around, but I don't necessarily know if they have enough goals in their team other than try to get Kiefer Moore something on a set piece, or maybe Philip Billing turns into Philip Coutinho. And then
ooh,
Philip Billing's got some top billing shots in him.
yeah,
We'll go with that.
billing.
Um,
Send the billing to.
there we go. And Southampton, because they look good in every game they play, but they don't necessarily put a lot of their chances away. And if they do get into kind of a relegation fight, it's not necessarily as aged a squad as Hasenhüttl has had in the past. A lot of these guys are new. So
Yeah,
you worry
they do have a lot of young guys.
you worry a little bit about that, but young guys, more legs, so maybe it'll be okay.
Yeah, see, that's the one saving grace. I think it might actually help.
Probably not World Cup fears either. Probably not
Oh yeah,
many guys playing.
not many. Yeah.
All right, let's move on to Leicester and Forest. Let's see how we are for time. It's probably bad. It is bad. Well, it'll be a long show. We'll just be a 2 hour show from now on. Leicester Forest, 4-0. Sorry. uh,
Eh,
goals from Madison, shot deflection. And then Harvey Barnes, shot from distance. Madison, a free kick. And then Daka. Daka is able to get one with a really cheeky backheel finish.
oh yeah, that was really nice.
However, I think this is kind of window dressing a little bit because the XG was about 1.3 to a 1.1. Leicester did have a number of shots, 7 on target, but a lot of these, the Madison kick shot deflected in. Harvey Barnes, it was a shot from distance. Maybe Penderson could have done better. Then you have a free kick, and then the Docker flick was insane.
Yeah,
So it's not like I don't know it. I don't necessarily want to poo on the parade, but I don't necessarily think this solves everything for Leicester, right?
yeah, no, definitely not.
Yeah,
But it was needed.
yeah.
Because
Good
I
point.
mean, well, I heard too going into the match that Rogers is kind of at the short end of the leash too. Not really sure how many games he has left if they're going to be losing. So it was important and a shutout. I mean, they've been leaking goals like crazy, so it's good confidence for the defense.
Hmm.
And I mean, Wout Faes has been pretty good so far. He was good in this game too. But I still don't I don't know about like Johnny Evans back there. Um, but they have some talent to score. Madison was great. If they can get him firing and Barnes firing. I don't know about Vardy. Maybe it's time to replace Vardy with Iheanacho. I still want Iheanacho just because of that one stretch where he scored, 10 goals in 8 games or whatever it was.
I'm with you.
I still want to see him, but
He must just be a terrible trainer. That's the only thing that makes sense. He's been put in the basement.
well, in the
He
games.
didn't even get a sub in this. Actually,
Mhm.
the last game he played in, he scored versus Brighton.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so I'm with you.
Sometimes he's subbed on, but he never like starts. It seems like. But
I'm with you on
yeah, I
that.
don't know. Vardy's not playing that. Like he hasn't done much this year, so maybe Vardy's just getting too old. He's the only one left, right, from the title-winning team. I think there might be one. Is he the only one? Yeah, he is.
Yeah, I guess Everton wasn't there at that point. That's a good shout.
No, and
Um,
Schmeichel left, so it was just
yeah,
them two. So
it
he's
would
the
have
only
been
one.
Schmeichel. Yeah, I mean, what's
Man,
kind of funny
they miss
is
they miss him.
I wanted to kind of get this out there. It's crazy how much different. I guess you could say 10 months or 9 months makes because last January, Forest as a championship side destroyed this Leicester team, and it was mostly the same team. Like Brendan Rodgers played a strong 11 that day, 4-1
Mm,
in the FA Cup. So just this is what happens when you lose a couple guys. Spence was great that day. You don't have Spence anymore, and I guess this is what
mhm.
happens when you're playing with a completely different team with all that turnover,
Yeah,
because they just
so much
they
turnover.
look miles off it.
They're
Um,
so disjointed. Yeah,
and you worry about
it
that.
does. Yeah, and it looks like it does. It looks like what they kind of did, and they bought a bunch of attacking players, and they kind of like, hey, all right, you got a couple days to train together and get used to playing with each other. Go out there and score goals, and it doesn't work that quick. Especially, it's hard enough to fit in like 2 or 3 players into a lineup, 2 or 3 new players, but you're going like, you're going 7, 8 new players in the lineup. They're going to be disjointed. It's just a question of when
And
do they, figure out playing together.
some of these are similar profiles. I mean, I understand the idea of trying to get like bench depth, but Jesse Lingard is not going to want to be a bench player to Morgan Gibbs White, and you paid 50 million for Morgan Gibbs White, so you probably have to play him too. Um,
Same with like Dennis. Dennis
Emmanuel
isn't going to
Dennis
want to
is
be
on
a
the
bench
bench,
player.
right?
Yeah,
To
Schwarber.
I want
Hmm.
and sometimes Surge even gets game time. It's a
Yeah,
weird way to do a lineup or a roster, and it's also weird how maybe Niakate gets back and he'll be able to play. I would at
they could
least
use
until
him.
then I would play Boney or Bowley.
Me too.
Well, Bowley's a good
Bali
player.
is
Bowley, yeah.
he's better than Cook or McKenna, definitely.
Huh. And
Hmm.
one thing to kind of keep on with Leicester is Madison did have 2 goals in this game, and I know there've been a lot of shouts online. Been upset that he hasn't gotten an angle call, but Southgate, the way Southgate plays is a weird system where it's almost it's almost like a 3-4-3, and he basically has the front players as supposed to be the wide players.
Yeah,
So he normally plays like Sterling or Sterling and Saka, I guess, and Kane.
wingers.
So you don't really know
Yeah.
if Southgate was playing with a 10. I guess Grealish could kind of fit in there as well, but Madison can maybe fit as a 10. I mean, Madison's been linked to Arsenal in the past. I mean, what are your thoughts on Madison as a player?
Yeah, we're seeing him come back from injury now,
Hmm.
and we're kind of seeing his potential. I really like him. I think he'll end up being on a bigger team uh, eventually. But I mean, I don't know. I agree with you where like I don't necessarily see him fitting into the starting 11 for England. But he would be a good bench option, you would think. I mean, he scores free kicks too. There's a bunch of people in the England squad that can do that, but he adds to that at least. But yeah, man, I think he's a good player. Um, it was kind of a coup just for Leicester to hang on to him.
Truly,
Not this
yeah.
summer, but last summer he was definitely linked with a bunch of teams. So I think he'll eventually move on and try to test himself with a bigger club in the Premier League. But for now, he's someone that they can kind of rely on to score goals because Vardy's not scoring. Um, who else is going to score? Tielemans is kind of in a drought, so I think Madison, Barnes are going to have to kind of carry the scoring this year. Maybe Tielemans steps up, Iheanacho maybe because I don't think Vardy can score. So yeah, I think it's good. It's a big season for Madison if he can step up and fill that scoring void. Then maybe you see him getting a big move this summer to a top four team in the Premier League.
I
I
mean,
think he can play with those big clubs.
the problem is like when you look at where he would probably suit. You can maybe look at because who plays with a 10 essentially. Chelsea almost might maybe makes the most sense because they almost
Mm,
play with like two tens the way that was how Tuchel played. I don't know how Potter's going to play. Um,
yeah, true.
But you could, if you think about a player like Madison, he's not necessarily going to be a wide player, and he's not going to do a ton of stuff without the ball. He's not necessarily
Hmm.
going to track back and run. So any team that runs a lot is not going to be a good side for him. But any team that's a good possession side that has the ball in the final third a lot, and that hey, maybe pick this lock for us, I think would work. And so in a weird way, or not in a weird way, you understand why he's been linked to Arsenal all these years because that is kind of what Odegaard does. But
Right.
Odegaard
Yeah,
probably
he'd be
does a
the
little bit
Odegaard kind
more
of.
without the ball pressing. And
Yeah.
they just brought in Vieira, so you don't necessarily see how that would work either. Um,
Yeah, I don't think he's going there anymore.
yeah,
I don't know.
because I know a lot of
Uh,
Liverpool supporters want him. They're like, oh, well, just he'll be the fix to the right wing or the right
eh,
mid side, and I don't think so. Yeah,
no,
I don't
no,
think he would play
no.
in midfield. He'd have to be played as a front player, and again,
Mhm.
he wouldn't press well.
Right.
And
That's
yeah,
what you need.
he wouldn't
Yeah.
offer
I mean,
width.
he would be, he might score some goals, but he wouldn't. Yeah, he wouldn't be
He would cut
like.
in.
I think Liverpool just need that strong like defensive mid, center mid combo kind of guy that isn't going to get hurt. Is what they need. They don't need necessarily because I feel like Elliot
Casado.
is kind of like a Madison, right?
Casado
Like
would be
Elliot
great.
can.
Yes, LA would
Oh
be
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
or Cavallo.
But Madison is good. Yeah, but Madison is a good player. I mean,
Mhm.
I think I would really like to see him in a top four squad. Like, can you imagine him at like City or something? Like if maybe Silva's too old and they get rid of him to Barca. Can you imagine Madison at City? But I don't know. I don't think he would play that much at City. But
Not
that's
not
going to
with
be the
not with
talk with
Grealish.
him because he's going to be the star at Leicester. Obviously, if he goes somewhere in the top four, maybe he's not starting all the time, so he has that to weigh too. In any decision making of leaving or staying. Also depends on if Leicester are even in the Premier League next year.
With the that is true because they are in last place. They've got too much to. Well,
I
I
would
don't
think so.
not with their keeper. I mean, they've given up more goals than anyone else.
Yeah.
Um,
Oof.
I don't know if Ward necessarily solves that. We'll see
Ward
how
is.
this Faust guy works out for them.
Yeah,
Um,
he's been good so far, but it's early days for him.
And so we'll try to wrap it up a little bit. We've got Aston Villa and Leeds. Should be pretty quickly because or
Boring.
pretty
Yeah,
easy.
boring game.
Both of these were ended 0-0. I mean the first one it kind of sucks because I was actually gassing up Sinistera to Jeremy. I was like, Leeds have done so well to get this guy because he looked great on the ball. He was doing he was shouldering people off. He looked like he had a low center of gravity when he was dribbling. Like
Mhm.
you don't necessarily have to be fast sprinting wise, but you need to be fast with the ball to be a wide player, and he definitely looked
Yeah.
it. But he got two really stupid yellows, and that red card really kind of screwed any chance Leeds had of getting something in this. And then Aston Villa just decided to miss a who's who of what's what of chances because their xG was over 2. They had 19 shots, 6 on target, and most of these were just Watkins kind of. Some of these were Melia making some good saves, but a lot of these were on Watkins not being confident in front of goal.
Yeah, it's weird because he was pretty good. He was pretty good last year. So I don't know. I don't know where that loss of confidence when it came in, but
Mhm.
yeah, it's like I don't know. He was playing well last year, and yeah, I think he got called up for the England squad, didn't he? And now it kind of
He got called
seems
up
like
at one
that
point.
confidence
Yeah, he's made
at one point.
he's
Yeah,
made caps.
yeah,
Because I think he's even scored. But I don't think he made the Euro squad, and I don't even know if he made the World Cup qualifying
I don't
roster.
think so. I
Yeah,
don't think so.
I mean, I kind of agree with you. I used to think he would be an option, just because of the kind of runs he does without the ball.
Mhm.
Any people that can do that will always be valuable.
Yeah,
And frankly, he's without him in the squad. I've seen talks online. Oh, they should play Danny Ings because Danny Ings would finish those chances. I don't think those chances would come because Coutinho is able to have this space because defenders are so worried about Watkins. They have to run with
mhm.
Watkins. That creates space for Coutinho to operate or Bradea to operate in.
Yeah,
And I don't think that would work
yeah,
with Ings. Um, and to kind of to touch on Leeds, we saw Bamford in the second half, so that was good. I think they need to get him going again. I know
yeah.
Rodrigo's
Definitely.
kind of gotten off to a hard start, but yeah, he hasn't. I think his like highest total was like 6 or 8. Um, I don't necessarily know if I would want to rely
Can't
necessarily
rely
on
on it.
him.
Yeah,
I mean, Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams look pretty good whenever they play, so that's
yeah.
good.
They're always fun to watch together too, and they're playing a lot, which is awesome for USA.
Saw an interesting stat actually that the two I think it's like the top two or the top four um, in when it came to like uh, pressing on the ball. It was the FBree stat of like pressing. The
Mhm.
top two, or two of the top four, were Brendan Aronson and Tyler Adams.
Hmm.
Now, playing for Marsh is kind of he asked you to do that, but they were the top two, or they were in the top four when it came to either getting a turnover or being successful pressing,
Mm.
which is interesting. Tyler
Hmm.
Adams would have worked at Liverpool. I'll die on that hill. That to be honest, or Musa would as well. To be honest, I mean
Yeah,
Tyler
yeah,
Adams would do those coverings for Trent. Um, oh well.
Hmm.
And I guess we talked a little bit about Villa. Oh, no Barbecue Kamara for Villa. He got injured in the last game, and it's turned out that he has probably a fairly big knee issue. And so you actually look, it's good they didn't sell Douglas Luiz because he's going to have to play CDM for them. Um,
Yeah,
and that really is unfortunate because I thought Louise and Kamara together as kind of like a pivot, kind of a two, were really really good versus Man City. I think that's kind of the reason why they gave City some problems in that midfield.
mm,
He was really good in there, and so that's a pretty big loss. He
yeah,
moved from Marseille and he was having a good. I thought he was having a good start to this to his EPL career, and they'll be out for him if it's a major knee, maybe February.
yeah.
We'll have to see on that. Actually, that might be why they won't want to lose Louise in January.
Mhm.
We'll have to
In
maybe follow that.
January.
Yeah,
Yeah, good call.
and then our final game, unfortunately, is for our buddy Jeremy. Well, not a lot happened, so we got to it last. So
Yeah,
this ends 0-0. Could have been worse, to be honest, because the XG actually says Brentford played better. I, on my eye, do not agree. I think they got lucky. Kind of
Funny had that clear off the line too. Like it
right.
was going to be a goal, and he kind of like cleared it with the top, like the very top of his head. And then Tony missed a good chance after that late in the second half. Like
I, I would call that
Brentford had more
I would
chances,
call that a
but
half chance.
half
Yeah.
chance. Whew.
I thought the ball. Well, maybe Holland finishes. I don't know. I'm not going to go
Yeah.
there.
Oh yeah. How?
Tony got. I mean, it's a ball kicked over ahead. Yeah, he started for service all game. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. The clearance on Lerma, though, it basically is. It's worth a goal.
It is, yeah, totally.
That is fantastic on his part. But frankly, I thought there was maybe a handball on Jensen at like the last second of the game that could have been called. The ref just
Mm.
didn't want to do it, and then I was amazed that the ref stuck to his decision because he didn't. He originally didn't call a PK on Ajer, but
Oh yeah.
VAR called him over, and this is like maybe the first time I've like seen this season. Someone said it happened. It happened in another game, but I can't remember which one. So the first time I saw it, where the ref stuck with his call, his original call. He didn't overturn it.
Mm. Yeah,
And
that
so
was questionable, but
yeah, it was 50-50, and the 50-50 went in Brentford's way. I mean, do you have any thoughts to add on Brentford or Bournemouth?
Damsgaard got his first start, which was nice to see for Brentford.
Hmm.
Kind of weird midfield with Yeno and Baptiste going kind of defensive there. But they have some injuries too. Norgard, they really
I think
want
they're missing
Norgard
Norgard.
back.
Yes.
Yeah, really badly. But I mean, I think it was kind of disappointing because they did have a lot more chances. But a draw's not bad. They have a lot of draws. They're picking up points. They need to win more games, and this was a winnable game. And I think that's what's disappointing if you're a Brentford fan is they don't they haven't won a lot this year. Only 2 wins and a bunch of draws, and this was one of the chances to get 3 points, and they didn't get it. So that's kind of disappointing. But still, not bad picking up points. Maybe this weekend they'll win a game because they do need to win, but they're in a good spot. I think they're doing well, especially considering Norgard's been out. So picking up points with Norgard out is always a positive thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I put that down as well. I do think they're missing Norgard because another thing that's it's happening is so you're playing Yanel. Yanel's done a decent enough job playing deeper and playing defensive, but Yanel is a good presser by himself. It wouldn't have really mattered versus Bournemouth. But he's also like he's a good box to box guy. He'll make runs into the box.
Yeah,
He can be an offensive threat in the attacking end, and you're kind of losing that as well. And so yeah, it's weird. Like Jeremy said, he thought that the strategy would be to play like a back five slash kind of system versus the good teams, and then to kind of be more attacking minded, playing with three attackers versus kind of teams like this. And we've kind of seen
mm,
that play out in pretty much every game, and that happened again. And it just hasn't necessarily worked out so far. But you
yeah,
imagine. Maybe I guess the numbers will dictate or will show that in the end this will kind of benefit them. Um,
yeah. I think so. Just picking up points and being steady.
Yeah, I mean another thing that's kind of interesting is, I mean, so Damsgaard got his debut. I mean, he got a shot, but it wasn't. He didn't necessarily do anything special. It is kind of interesting how one of their other signings, Hickey, has taken a little longer to kind of get settled in, and this was I guess the first game with Ajer like fully healthy, and Ajer got the
Mhm.
start. And
Yeah,
Hickey did come on in the second half, but I did think that was kind of interesting because I think if you played a back three, you could play Ajer and someone like Hickey as kind of a wing back,
coming back.
and like the way Ajer is like so unique. But I don't know if Thomas Frank wants to necessarily do that because you could like double up but Ajer can also make forward runs himself. I've seen him do that. He's like a weird he's really good with the ball at his feet for being like how big he is. Um,
Yeah, he is huge.
uh,
He usually plays like center back or in a back three. So
mhm.
yeah, I don't know. It gives you more options at least because Hickey has been playing a lot, so it was good to like get him a rest. Being a younger player, new to the Premier League.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, I was just it's so weird. Like so many of these teams, I think their last game was versus Leeds. So the last time they play, well, maybe not. I know Leeds' last game was versus Brentford. But I mean, these guys have had like 3 weeks or 2 weeks to. Because I don't know if Hickey played for Scotland. Maybe that was it.
I think he
Uh,
did, yeah,
okay, well there you go.
or at least a little bit.
And so that is mostly it.
Cool.
And so I guess Champions League starts back up for
Yeah,
this
we
week.
got soccer
We
every
don't
day.
necessarily have to go over that again. Liverpool plays Rangers, so I'm hoping hoping for 3 points and hopefully no injuries. So because big
Yeah,
it's
that's
a
the main thing.
gigantic October set up for them because they have Chelsea. I think Chelsea got rescheduled, so Chelsea I guess will be somewhere in there as well. But they have Arsenal and
Ooh.
Man City for the next two, at least.
Ooh. Yeah, those are two huge games for them.
So it's like
Huge.
it's not necessarily that it's worth melting down and spending 30 minutes to like freak out about Liverpool just because they drew Brighton. It's what they have ahead of them, and it's just
Right.
frankly, yeah, it's been every game has been kind of the same thing, other than again the results have kind of been different. Like Fabio Cavallo got like a last second winner against Newcastle. Like they could have only had one win with like five draws.
Yeah.
So
Or we could have won like this Brighton game too and had a couple more wins. It's crazy like how close everything is in the Premier League. Like inches and turn 1 point to three or 0 points to three, and it changes like the whole game.
I mean, when I was writing the list or writing down the list for like the top 10, you really do see like how basically everyone in that top 10 you could maybe see getting relegated. Other well maybe there are a couple like Forest and I guess Bournemouth would maybe kind of be separated, but everyone else you kind of look is almost like equal. And so you
Mhm.
look, Man City's making this league look like they've Bayernized the league. It
Yeah.
looks like they're going to win the fifth in a row, and the top four looks pretty even, but there's still a gigantic gap. So I think we talked about in the beginning of the season how this is like the most talented the league's been.
Mhm.
There's just the talent is almost all on the top four teams or the top six-ish teams,
Top loaded. Yeah.
and then top loaded, right? And then there's not necessarily a lot of like dreadful teams, but there's a lot of mediocrity, I would put. And so you
That's
can see a
true.
lot
A
of these
lot of
teams
teams too
drawing each
don't
other.
know
Not
what you're thinking.
necessarily,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, Charles. Yeah, because they do like like Wolves are tough to beat because they don't concede but they don't score. So like so yeah, some of those teams are just setting up to be hard defensively, and it's just they're tough to score on, and who knows what's gonna happen.
I think Villa's only scored 6 goals for their season as well, so they're not out of the woods.
No, and they should be scoring a lot more with the players they have.
Yeah. Yep. All right, man. Well, sorry for putting you through the ringer. Let's say if we're under two.
Whew.
We are just right at two. Do you have any closing thoughts?
No, man, I'm happy to have soccer every day basically this week. Looking forward to Champions League, Europa League, and then some big games this weekend, man. Coming down thick and fast before the World Cup. We'll have a lot of games.
Ah, man, I'm only just now kind of realizing it now, but man, if Liverpool get pantsed, I'm going to get so many texts from Andrew. So I'm hoping they at least keep it respectable. I mean, they could turn up, and they could also not. So I mean,
Interesting.
this will be a big test for I guess both teams. The way Andrew texted me after the Spurs game is he was like, "This is basically the top four test, and we'll see how they do for the next couple weeks because they have City. They
Yeah,
have City coming up as well, don't they?
yeah. They haven't played City yet, so yeah. I
And
don't
that
know. I don't know how good that'll go for Arsenal,
I
but
think it's City within this month.
yeah,
So
probably.
that'll be
Ugh.
that'll be the day that this Arteta and Pep love fest online ends. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't think Arsenal are going to be able to compete. Well, they'll be able to compete, but I don't think they're going to be. City's too good.
Jesus against Pep. We'll see if
Yeah,
that maybe backfires or Zinchenko as well.
yeah. Hopefully it lights a little bit extra fire for them because Arsenal's going to need it against City. Honestly, City's just they're so good. Holland is going to destroy Arsenal's back line, even though like it's not. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I'm very curious about it though.
If Saliba does a thing on Holland, everyone will call him the next Van Dyke. So that'll
Oh,
be
don't say
something.
that.
That'll be something to say. Well, he has to get a chance
Still it.
to
No,
go
I'm just
against Van Dyke. That'll be
yeah, it'd be interesting.
he's getting shouts like that so far. So quite a quite a good start to the season. Good to actually have the league back. We haven't had it because of a certain queen passing. Um, at least
An international break.
for Liverpool's sake, and also yeah, the international break.
Hate that thing.
We can talk a little bit about USA a little here and there, but the more I talk about Berhalter, my blood boils. So it's good we don't do that every week.
Yeah, true.
All right, man.
We'll save that for November.
All right, man. We'll kind of end there. And do you want to throw us out?
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you for joining us today. You Stay squatty.
All right. And stop recording.